The first thing the human ambassador did when she landed on Verex 9 was trip over a squeaking purple creature the size of a house cat. "Ah, sorry," she gasped, barely keeping her balance. The creature rolled upright, 6 tiny paws flailing, large silver eyes blinking up at her. It made a soft chirping sound that echoed across the polished landing platform. Behind her, the Verexian welcoming committee froze in collective horror. Ambassador Ilara Hayes stared down at the tiny being. "Is it okay?" One of the tall, crystalline Verexians stepped forward, their voice vibrating like wind through glass. "You have encountered a cub," Ilara blinked. "A cub?" "The offspring of our high science coordinator." The tiny purple cub wobbled forward and wrapped 2 paws around Ilara's boot. The entire welcoming committee emitted a synchronized gasp. Ilara looked down at the cub clinging to her leg. "Ah, hi." The cub squeaked again, louder this time, and pressed its round face against her shin. The high science coordinator hurried forward, crystalline frills shimmering anxiously. "Remove the cub from the human." "Are not doing anything," Ilara said carefully. "It just attached itself." The cub suddenly sniffed the air. Its silver eyes widened. And then it did something no Verexian cub had ever done before. It drooled. The welcoming committee fell silent. The cub began licking Ilara's boot. Ilara frowned. "Okay, that's new." The high science coordinator tilted their head. "Human ambassador, what substance coats your foot coverings?" Ilara's eyes widened. "Oh, that's probably from lunch. I had chocolate pudding on the ship." The cub froze mid-lick. Then it chirped at a pitch that made the crystal structures around the landing pad hum. Within seconds, 3 more cubs came tumbling across the platform from somewhere behind the delegation. They surrounded Ilara's boots like fluffy purple satellites, and they all started sniffing. The adult Verexians began whispering in harmonic frequencies. "This is unprecedented. They do not react to standard nutrient paste in this manner." "Is the human emitting a mating pheromone?" Ilara coughed. "It's pudding." "Just pudding." The first cub reached up, pawing at her pant leg. Another tried climbing her calf. A third began making insistent squeaks. "They want more," Ilara realized. The high science coordinator stared in disbelief. "Our cubs are notoriously difficult to feed. They reject 82% of approved nutrition formulas." Ilara slowly crouched down. "You're telling me they're picky eaters?" "Yes. It is a significant societal challenge." One cub reached her hand and sniffed her fingers. She laughed softly. "You little guys like chocolate?" The cub chirped again and lightly nibbled her glove. The high science coordinator made a sharp crystalline noise. "They are attempting to ingest your appendage." "They're fine," Ilara assured. "Back home, human kids do the same thing when they want snacks." The Verexians exchanged stunned glances. "You are suggesting this behavior is normal among your species?" "Very," Ilara said. "Especially if sugar is involved?" The cubs were now fully climbing her legs. The welcoming ceremony was officially in chaos. A diplomatic aide whispered urgently, "Should we initiate a retrieval protocol?" The high science coordinator hesitated. The cubs were purring. Actually purring. Verexian cubs did not purr. Ilara carefully scooped one into her arms. It was surprisingly warm and incredibly soft, like holding a fuzzy heated pillow. It immediately began licking the faint smear of chocolate on her sleeve. The cub's eyes fluttered in bliss. A harmonic shockwave rippled through the adult Verexians. "It exhibits joy," one whispered. "That is a pleasure response." The high science coordinator stared at Ilara. "Human ambassador, what is pudding?" Ilara smiled. "It's a dessert, sweet, creamy, made with cocoa, milk, sugar." The cub in her arms chirped loudly at the word sugar. The others echoed it. The high science coordinator's frills shimmered in alarm. "Sugar is not a primary Verexian nutrient. It's not exactly healthy for us either," Ilara admitted. "But in small amounts, it's happiness in a cup." The cub she was holding gave a tiny sneeze and then snuggled against her jacket. The high science coordinator stared in open astonishment. "Our cubs do not willingly make physical contact with non-parental adults." Ilara blinked. "Seriously?" "Yes. They are independent from early development. Another cub tugged at her pant leg again and made a demanding squeak. She laughed. Well, I think they've decided I'm the pudding provider. The diplomatic aide leaned closer to the coordinator. If the human can encourage nutrient acceptance in cubs. The high science coordinator's frills slowly shifted from alarm blue to thoughtful gold. Human ambassador, they said carefully. Would you be willing to demonstrate this pudding? Elara grinned. You want me to make some? Yes, for scientific evaluation. And the cubs? She asked. The cubs were now sitting in a neat little semicircle, staring up at her with wide silver eyes. For the cubs, the coordinator confirmed. Elara stood up, still holding one of the purring fluff balls. Well then, I'll need a kitchen. The Virexians did not have kitchens. They had nutrient assembly chambers. Elara stared at the sterile metallic room filled with tubes and glowing liquid reservoirs. You don't cook anything? Thermal alteration of food is inefficient, the coordinator explained. Elara sighed. Okay, first lesson in human superiority. Sometimes inefficiency tastes better. The cub in her arms squeaked approvingly. The coordinator blinked. It agrees with you. Of course it does. Within minutes, Virexian technicians were scanning the molecular structure of cocoa powder from Elara's ship supplies. The cubs sat in a line outside the chamber's transparent barrier, watching her every move. She mixed milk substitute with cocoa and sugar, stirring slowly. The scent began to spread through the chamber. The cubs went still. Every adult Virexian monitoring the scene registered a spike in cub attention levels. Elara poured the mixture into heating containers. This is where the magic happens, she said. The coordinator tilted their crystalline head. It is undergoing controlled thermal agitation. Exactly. Magic. The smell deepened. One cub pressed both paws against the glass. Another started purring again. When the pudding thickened, Elara poured small portions into shallow nutrient trays. She opened the chamber door carefully. The cubs rushed forward but stopped just short of the trays. They looked up at her, waiting. Elara crouched down. Go on, it's for you. The first cub leaned forward and licked the surface. It froze. Its eyes widened. And then it made a sound that had never before been recorded in Virexian history. A happy squeal. The other cubs dove in. Within seconds, purple faces were covered in chocolate smears. They chirped, squeaked, and purred in chaotic delight. The adult Virexians stared in stunned silence. Nutritional acceptance rate, 100%. Emotional response, extreme positive. The high science coordinator slowly turned toward Elara. You have accomplished in 10 minutes what our science divisions have failed to achieve in 12 planetary cycles. Elara wiped chocolate off one cub's nose. It's just pudding. The coordinator's frills shimmered brightly. No, human ambassador. They watched as the cubs licked their trays clean and then toddled back toward Elara, curling around her boots in contentment. This, the coordinator said softly, is diplomacy. Elara smiled down at the chocolate-covered fluff balls. Wait until you see what happens when I introduce them to cookies, the cubs chirped in unison. And somewhere deep in the Virexian data archives, a new research category was created, Human Confectionery, Potential Civilization Level Breakthrough. The Virexian High Council was in chaos. The official reason? An emergency session to discuss an unexpected behavioral shift in their young. The unofficial reason? Why were 6 purple cubs following a human ambassador everywhere she went? I'm Ambassador Elara Hayes, and as I walked down the polished crystal corridor, I had a little entourage. 6 adorable, waddling cubs in a perfect line behind me, squeaking with every step I took. Every adult Virexian we passed froze, whispering in confusion. Was this a bonding ritual? Had I imprinted on their young? Guys, you don't have to follow me, I said, glancing back. They just stared. I took a step back. They took a step forward. The high science coordinator, gliding beside me, was shimmering in what I could only describe as panic. This attachment behavior is escalating, they said. They just like me, I replied cheerfully. And maybe the pudding, the coordinator looked grave. Or, you have become a primary resource entity. I blinked. You mean snack mom? They paused. That translation appears accurate. Just then, A cub tried to climb my pant leg again. The coordinator let out a harmonic sigh of defeat. We entered the council chamber, an enormous space filled with towering crystalline figures. Light refracted through them, painting rainbows on the floor. I stepped forward, and my 6 little shadows marched right in behind me. The entire chamber gasped. "Why are cubs present in a diplomatic chamber?" one counselor resonated sharply. "They insisted," I said, as the cubs formed a perfect semicircle around my boots and sat down. The high science coordinator addressed the council. "Since exposure to the human confectionery substance designated pudding, cubs have displayed unprecedented cooperation, emotional bonding, and nutritional acceptance." "Is this manipulation?" a counselor demanded. "It's dessert," I shot back. The cub nearest me nudged my ankle and squeaked, as if to agree. Another counselor spoke up. "We require a demonstration." All 6 cubs perked up. I sighed dramatically. "You guys just want another batch, don't you?" 6 pairs of eager silver eyes confirmed it. "For science," the coordinator shimmered. "Of course," I said. "For science. For our second experiment, the chamber was packed with observers, scanners, and specialists. They had even assembled a portable heating station just for me." "You really didn't have cooking tools?" I asked. "We are reconsidering several life choices," the coordinator replied dryly. The cubs waited in a neat line, practically vibrating with excitement. I mixed the cocoa, milk substitute, and sugar, but this time I added a secret ingredient, a small amount of finely crushed Virexian nutrient crystal. The chamber gasped. "Fusion cuisine," I announced proudly. As the mixture heated, the rich smell filled the air. Every cub froze. Their data monitors spiked. One cub's frills flared bright pink, which a scientist whispered indicated extreme excitement. When the pudding thickened, I poured it into little trays and set them down. The cubs looked at me, waiting for permission. "Go ahead," I smiled. They pounced. The air filled with purrs and squeals of delight. One even rolled onto its back mid-lick in pure bliss. The council watched the biometric readouts in stunned silence. Cooperative feeding was confirmed. Stress markers were minimal. Social bonding had increased by 43%. The high science coordinator watched a cub happily smearing pudding all over its face. This level of emotional expression? We believed it diminished after early development. I knelt down and gently wiped the cub's chin. "Back on Earth, we figured something out a long time ago," I said. "And what is that?" the coordinator asked. The cub I cleaned leaned into my hand. "Food isn't just fuel," I explained. "It's comfort, it's bonding. It's family." Silence fell over the chamber. When the cubs finished, they didn't scatter as usual. Instead, they gathered together in a soft purring pile of purple fluff. The sound was like gentle music. Several council members flickered in shock. "They are resting together," one observed. "That behavior is typically limited to first-cycle hatchlings," I smiled. Sugar crash. Then something truly unexpected happened. One small cub toddled away from the cuddle pile and approached a counselor, who stiffened immediately. The cub looked up with its wide silver eyes, chirped, and offered the counselor its now empty pudding tray. The chamber went silent. The high science coordinator whispered, "It is, sharing." My heart melted. "Told you." Bonding. Slowly, awkwardly, the counselor extended a crystalline limb and dipped the very tip into the pudding residue. Everyone waited. "It is pleasant." More gasps. "It is inefficient," the counselor continued, "but the sensory complexity is stimulating." I couldn't help but grin. Welcome to dessert. Hours later, the council reached a decision. Human culinary practices may offer significant developmental benefits for Virexian young, the coordinator announced. "We propose a cultural exchange." "You want cooking lessons?" I asked. "Yes. In return, we will share our advanced nutrient synthesis technology." I pretended to think it over. Behind me, 6 pudding-filled cubs were fast asleep in a warm, purring heap. I smiled. Deal. The council resonated in formal agreement, but for the first time, the sound carried a new warmth. As the session ended, the smallest cub sleepily crawled over and curled up around my boot again. The coordinator observed quietly, "You have altered our species' developmental trajectory." I just shrugged. I just made pudding. "No human ambassador," they said, looking at the sleeping cubs. "You reminded us that nourishment is not solely chemical." I leaned against the chamber wall, exhausted but happy. "Wait until you see what happens when I teach them about birthday parties." The coordinator paused. "Define birthday." My grin widened. "Oh, you're going to love this. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more adventures from across the galaxy." The word birthday spread across Virex 9 faster than a solar flare. Within one planetary rotation, the High Science Coordinator had received over 4,000 research inquiries, nearly 900 ethical concerns, and one very formal complaint titled, "Potential Sugar-Based Cultural Overthrow." Ambassador Ilara Hayes found herself, once again, standing in a room full of very serious crystalline aliens, and 6 very unserious purple cubs. "Let me get this straight," a counselor said, their voice chiming sharply. "Humans celebrate the completion of one orbital cycle around their star by consuming sweetened combustion products?" Ilara crossed her arms. "When you say it like that, it sounds bad." The smallest cub tugged on her pant leg, looking up with wide, hopeful eyes. "Yes," she sighed. "There will be cake." The cub squealed with such force that 3 scientists flinched at the volume spike. The High Science Coordinator approved a controlled trial. The subject was one Virexian cub nearing its first cognitive bloom, a major developmental milestone. The objective? To determine if a birthday celebration could enhance cub social cohesion and emotional resilience. In other words, they were about to throw the galaxy's first alien birthday party. Ilara stood inside the newly constructed Culinary Adaptation Lab. The room was now filled with heating units, mixing bowls, and what looked like an over-engineered frosting dispenser, probably built by the same species that usually engineers quantum reactors. "You guys really go all in, huh?" she muttered. "We do not engage in halves," the coordinator replied, their voice a series of resonating tones. The 6 cubs sat in a perfect, vibrating line behind a safety barrier, watching her every move. Ilara began mixing the ingredients for a chocolate cake. Flour substitute, cocoa, synthesized eggs, milk variant, and sugar. The moment she poured the sugar into the bowl, something amazing happened. The cubs collectively leaned forward, pressing their little faces against the transparent barrier. Monitors beeped rapidly. "Excitement levels are exceeding the previous pudding experiment," a scientist whispered. Ilara just grinned. "Oh, just you wait." As the cake baked, Ilara explained the real meaning behind the ritual. "A birthday isn't just about food," she said. "It's about making someone feel special." The coordinator tilted its crystalline structure. "Clarify special?" Ilara's voice softened. "It means," she said gently, "that you stop everything for a moment and just celebrate that someone exists." Silence rippled across the chamber. "That seems inefficient," one scientist murmured. "Very," Ilara agreed. "And very important." The cub, selected for the experiment designated Cub Prime, tilted its round purple head and chirped questioningly. Ilara crouched beside the barrier. "It means today is all about you, little buddy." Cub Prime blinked, then placed both paws against the barrier and purred. Several adult Virexians stiffened. "That tone indicates emotional overload," a researcher noted. "Is it distressed?" Ilara smiled. "No, it's happy." Then the aroma filled the lab. Richer than pudding, deeper, warmer. The cubs went completely still. Even the scientists stopped speaking. When Ilara removed the cake from the heating chamber, a wave of pure chocolate scent washed over everyone. Cub Prime made a tiny, awestruck squeak. Ilara carefully spread chocolate frosting over the top, then paused. "Oh, right, candles." The entire lab tensed up. "You will ignite the food?" the coordinator asked, a hint of alarm in their tone. "Tiny flames, controlled, trust me." Within minutes, Virexian engineers had constructed 6 perfectly stabilized micro-combustion sticks. Ilara blinked. "Those are the safest candles I have ever seen." The coordinator simply repeated. We do not engage in halves. She placed the candles on the cake and lit them. Small flames flickered, and the cubs stared in absolute wonder. Cub Prime's silver eyes reflected the light like tiny galaxies. Alara turned off the overhead illumination, leaving the room bathed in the soft glow of the candles. Okay, she whispered. Now we sing. The council stiffened again. Sing? Someone echoed nervously. Yes, it's tradition. She began softly, Happy birthday to you. Her voice, a little off-key and very human, echoed through the crystalline chamber. The cubs tilted their heads. The high science coordinator hesitated, then attempted to replicate the melody using harmonic resonance. It sounded like a choir of glass wind chimes. Other council members joined in. Soon, the lab was filled with a strange but beautiful blend of human singing and crystalline harmony. Cub Prime began vibrating in place as emotional readings spiked off the charts. As the final note ended, Alara leaned down. Make a wish, she whispered. Cub Prime blinked. It's symbolic, she added quickly. You just think of something you want. The cub closed its eyes, and its frills glowed a soft pink. Then, Alara gently guided it closer. Blow out the candles. Cub Prime stared at the flames, inhaled sharply, and released a small puff of air. The flames flickered out. For a moment, there was darkness. Then, the chamber lights came back on, and the entire council erupted in a chorus of harmonic resonance. There wasn't alarm or confusion. It was joy. Cub Prime squealed louder than ever before, and launched itself at Alara's leg. She laughed, carefully lifting the little creature up. Time for cake. She cut a small piece and placed it on a tray. Cub Prime sniffed it, licked it, paused, and then made a sound so high-pitched that several monitoring devices had to recalibrate. The other cubs started bouncing in place. The council watched the data cascade across their displays. Emotional bonding levels at unprecedented highs, collective resonance increasing. Then, Cub Prime did something completely unexpected. Instead of devouring the entire slice, it broke off a small piece and toddled toward the high science coordinator. The coordinator froze. Cub Prime held up the cake offering. The chamber fell silent. Slowly, carefully, the coordinator accepted the offering and tasted it. Their crystalline structure shimmered in cascading colors no one had ever seen before. What are you experiencing? A scientist whispered. The coordinator's voice trembled slightly. Connection, the word echoed across the chamber. Hours later, the results were undeniable. Cub cooperation had increased. Aggression markers had decreased. Adult cub proximity tolerance rose by 67%. The council gathered once more. The high science coordinator addressed them. Human ritualized celebration produces measurable developmental benefits. There was a pause. It also produces something less measurable. Alara leaned against the wall, now surrounded by 6 frosting-covered cubs. And what's that? She asked. The coordinator looked at Cub Prime, now asleep against Alara's shoulder. Belonging. A gentle silence settled over the room. The coordinator turned to her. Human ambassador. How many of these rituals does your species possess? Alara smiled slowly. Oh, she said. You have no idea. Behind her, one sleepy cub mumbled a tiny squeak. Deep within the Virexian archives, a new directive was created. Human Cultural Exchange Program, Priority Level 1. Because if pudding could change feeding behavior, and cake could create belonging, what would happen when the Virexians discovered holidays? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from across the galaxy.